Welcome back to Tetrakan Super Monoblock. In a previous video you saw me taking apart a Tascam 414 Mark II, and I noted that some of these faders are very stiff, and you can see the oxidation that's happened on the metal case of this one. I have a 414 Mark I that I can use as a donor. I'm more interested in getting the Mark II up and running just because it's more valuable if I do decide to sell it, because of the 9-inch nails effect, like famous musicians using it basically, and also I'm a sucker for blue plastic. However, if possible, I'd like to get both units working, so what I'm going to attempt to do is remove these, pry them apart, and get at the ferric plates. These wipers are moving along, and see if I can get rid of the oxidation, sand them down, put some sort of treatment on them to prevent them from rusting further, reassemble them, and hopefully the unit will work well. So the only caps that I haven't already removed from these boards are these ones that go on the gain sliders for the 4 channels. I find it helpful to mark the contacts in the back of the board when I desolder. So for the, I believe it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a configuration like that for these gain sliders. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 for one of these longer level sliders. I won't show you the removal of every fader, but I'll show you the removal of the first one. Basically, I'm going to be introducing some fresh solder into these points in order to make the removal via solder sucker and desoldering wick easier. And I'll use the solder sucker, and then I'll use the wick. Give these pins a wiggle, needle nose pliers, and at that point they should pull out. By the way, don't be concerned with this kind of orange bubbling stuff. Basically, there's a kind of coating of rosin, which is a substance that assists the soldering process, and I guess the way that these are mass manufactured, they'll just cover the whole board with rosin before the assembly line people solder the joints, or robots. Maybe it's done by robots, that would be cool. But when you get these, there's usually a lot of this orange rosin all over the boards, and so if you desolder anything it bubbles a bit. It doesn't necessarily mean that your soldering iron is too hot. I've missed one out at the top here. In fact, you can see with only one pin in, as I heated that dropped out. So I've removed all those faders from the board. There are 3 kinds. These smaller ones are for the gain, these ones are the levels for the channels, and we have a master fader as well. They all open in a similar way. I'll just demonstrate using this small one. You can see I've already opened up one of the pins. There's 4 of them holding it in place. I just use needle nose pliers. Get them sort of straight so they're at 90 degrees to the casing. Once you've got them all, this should come free. It's normally easier than this. I think it's possibly because I've chosen one that's very corroded. Pay attention as that comes off to the orientation of this brush inside. You can see that there's shorter brush and longer ones. The shorter one should be at the top being the part that has fewer pins, and you can see there's more pins here. Right, you can see the amount of dirt that's built up in here, but the plate doesn't look too bad. That would probably clean up. The oxidation inside this is probably preventing this part from travelling up and down freely. If you filed in there, that would probably be okay, but the problem here is that should have little brush parts there. And let me show you one that's in better condition. There you see there's I mean, that's a little bit corroded and bent as well, but there are 3 brushes protruding from that. If they're intact, you're okay, but you can see this one snapped all together. So that rubbing against this is going to be very rough. I don't think that's salvageable, unfortunately. So I will need one of the donor faders from the 414 Mark I. These others are going to open in a similar way. There's just more pins, so for the channel fader we've got 8, whereas we've got 10 pins for the master fader. I'll just open the pins on the channel fader. You can see it's much the same idea. You can see how much dirt collects around here. This brush here is okay. That's just about okay. You can see the tip snapped off one of them, but then this one, the end snapped off that. Probably that alone is going to give you enough contact, so it could be salvaged in a pinch, but ideally we would not want to use this brush in this condition. Finally, here's inside the master fader, and the brush inside here is in very bad condition. You can see it's split into 2 channels with a separate brush for the left and the right channel. Most of the brush parts for one of the channels have snapped off. I mean, this one, in fact, I touched that, that's falling to pieces. I think what's happened with this model is somebody's just poured a drink on it, and the oxidation's just ruined the brushes in these. What I was wondering if I would see is a significantly different material on the conductive plate, because I've got experience of doing this same thing on a 244 but not for a 414. I was just wondering why it felt so rough, but I think the roughness is that when some of these faders, these brushes have broken off, and so the sharp edges of the broken brush are just scraping along here. So I wondered if this was going to be a video about refurbishing these. Certainly you could clean them if they were in better condition by doing what I've just demonstrated, but I think some of these are beyond repair. My only hope might be to got quite a lot of spare parts, so maybe the brush from the fader on another model is going to fit inside these cases, because basically I think these cases and conductive plates are alright. It's the brushes that are so corroded that they're unusable. So I'll look into that. If that proves to be a possible solution, then that's what you're going to see in the next clip. If it turns out that's a dead end, then you're about to see a clip acknowledging that. Is Schrodinger's cat alive or dead? Let's find out. I think it's good news. I think the cat's alive. Here's a 464. By the looks of it, the size and depth of the faders in there are the same. That means that I could remove these, pry them apart, and I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, well, we call that brush assemblies, that sounds posh, because I think that part's going to be the same for these shorter gain ones for the 414. This master fader feels alright, so presumably the brush in that's okay. So even if the values of the conductive plate are different to what's used in the 414 Mark II, and I could take that part out of that fader, I could use that to refurbish it. Okay, so I removed all those faders from the 464 board. Condition of the brushes in there is fine. I've taken this from one of the stereo return channels on the 464, and you can see that lines up fine with this conductive plate from the 44 Mark II. It's going to be the right depth. So procedure for me here is going to be any dirt on these conductive plates that I've removed, get rid of that with a wipe. That's an isopropyl wipe of the kind you would use if you're a nurse or a tattooer or something. The same in here. Make sure that there's enough time for the alcohol to evaporate. Put that back on and bend the pins over again so it's shut. And once it's shut, then I'll put a little bit of deoxit fader lube in there. And I can solder them back into the 44 board, and they should be fine at that point. So I'll film again once that's all reassembled. That's the unit reassembled. And I'm playing back Cold Cuts by Drome with the Brothers Nylon. It's playing pretty fast because that's double speed, and it's maybe still quite a bit more, but you can hear that the faders are working pretty well. Obviously tracks 3 and 4 are playing backwards because with a conventional tape you would record one side of the tape in one direction on tracks 1 and 2 and the other side of the tape backwards. You'd flip the tape over so it played forwards, but the way 4-tracks work. I'm sorry if I'm over explaining this, but this is just for the benefit of everyone who's watching that who hasn't figured this out yet. You play both sides of the tape at once. That's how you get 4 tracks instead of just 2 tracks left and right. Anyway, it works. So thanks for watching, and please subscribe if you would like to see more videos like this, and I hope to see you again soon.